It's a rare event. Well, maybe it has happened with our MSc class, most of the undergraduates that I'm aware of. It's a very good thing here that on the platform of MSM class, we're having people meet and get married to each other. So congrats to the class. I'm afraid our class meeting tonight might take a much shorter time than we had planned. That's partly my fault because I've had a very busy day and I feel a little bit tired. Nonetheless, I would like us to discuss how far we've gotten so far, because the records of what we had done before COVID-19 lockdown seem not to be exactly the same as I thought I had. So I would value it very much if I get your responses on what we have covered so far. Then I can know whether I'm wrong or whether I still need one or two more classes. It's exactly important. So I really would need your responses. That's why I'm appealing that we please unmute so that we can discuss this later. Mr. Fatile, Mr. Dekoya, Mr. Boyeji, and the others who are in class now, please unmute so that we can talk about it. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Dekoya. I asked the class governor, if you have covered the following topics. I know just before we all had to stop classroom activities as well, subsequently evaluated. However, before that, my own record says we had covered some terms. So I want to please confirm whether what I have correct in my record, you covered serve one. Please respond.
Hello, me too.
We have covered excellence model, ESM. We have covered not accepting that. I'm sure we have covered the excellence, covered the balance scorecard. Can you remember that? Other members of the class, please conclude so that we can talk about.
Everybody on mute now.
Most occupancy evaluation is covered. EFQM is covered, right?
Yes, ma'am.
I was just trying to update myself so that I'll be sure whether we are able or not, and I'll know what next. At this stage, I'd like to tell the classes I have listed some materials in the classroom for non-teacher solution. Following our discussion on benchmarking, I came across a webinar on YouTube that looked into COVID challenges of benchmarking in facilities management in some situations outside of Nigeria. It's a discussion following presentation papers, and they were kind of responding to questions on the subject matter. So I would be very grateful if all of you could listen to that webinar. It's about an hour or so. It will be an eye-opener, help you to have a full grasp of what firms outside of Nigeria experienced and how they tried to adjust their operations, and also how benchmarking activities are affected by all that has happened so far. The challenges are quite practical, unique what many firms are experiencing across the globe. Okay, having said that, I would like to know that I also asked him another material that I have uploaded to him, not my own paper, but the paper that was presented, published online also, that would be useful for you to have better insights into our discussions on other aspects of the fact. So SAPCOL is done, SAPAP is done, POE is done. Where is my right? Sorry. Yes. EFQM is done, and we have also discussed benchmark. So, can we just very briefly, because I guess you might be as tired as I am, briefly look at the general constraints and problems of performance evaluation. General constraints and problems of performance evaluation. General constraints and problems in performance evaluation. Now, in the past, the evaluation of performance of facilities and facilities management hinged most on trying to find out the extent to which financial goals were met, and also trying to evaluate how the objectives of ownership, the objectives of operations have been achieved through the management of those facilities. Okay. Concentrating on only those aspects made it difficult to see comprehensively how much facilities were contributing to the bottom line, and also made it very difficult for the management of the companies to be able to just a moment, be able to take appropriate decisions on the necessary actions that were necessary, that they needed to take in order to improve the situation within their firms. Now, since then, as we have been discussing so far, there have been a lot of efforts on the factors considered in facilities performance evaluation in order to ensure that companies can benchmark, companies can innovate, companies can get the best as they go along in the use of their facilities. So techniques have been developed, new ones are being developed all the time, and those who are developing them are not idle. They don't just say, okay, I'm going to do something and then fold their hands. Rather, they go back again and again, reassess, to reevaluate, and to make sure that what they have developed is appropriate for industry and is yielding the expected benefits to those who apply them. I want us to now look at how far have we gone in the area of facilities performance evaluation. The topic, the techniques that are being used now fully appropriate for what firms require. What stage of development are we at? And secondly, what are the constraints that facilities managers are facing in applying these techniques? Currently, we have quite a large number of different techniques appropriate for different situations, for different types of facilities, and techniques that are constantly being reviewed in order to bring in variables that initially were overlooked. Right now, we have transited from finance-only considerations and or consumer input, consumer satisfaction? Are consumers happy with the spaces they occupy, the way those spaces are managed, the way those spaces are configured and prepared to them? Are they finding the space they occupy amenable enough to have it reflected in the profitability of their operations? These are things that have now been brought into the broad heading of facilities performance evaluation. But we need to find out whether we have gotten to a good enough stage, or whether there are challenges that we need to overcome. To remind ourselves of the first lecture we had, what are the principal objectives of facilities performance evaluation? Looking at those objectives help us reconceptualize the issue of these obstacles and how they constitute problems and what we can do about them. Okay. Primarily, FM performance evaluation aims at trying to, in a proactive way, measure, like I said, the extent to which the physical facilities are contributing to the success of the business, contributing to the achievement of the goals of the users of the facility. Okay, that's the major thing that FM performance evaluation tries to do. In addition, it tries to promote innovation. When you have benchmarked and you are trying to see whether you are catching up with those that are best in the field you are in, if you are self-satisfied and you fold your arms, you might find yourself outperformed at the end of the day, and then you are left behind. So what do firms do? They use the information they have, they use the report of their evaluation to try and find out what are those critical areas where we are underperforming, and what can we do to ensure that we perform better. Secondly, they use it to try and find out where they can be ahead, where they can have an advantage over the competition, where they can build their competencies in order to have an edge over others and be able to improve their profit, be able to improve their image in the industry, be able to improve customer satisfaction. So in judging this, the normal thing is to remember that the business environment is a very dynamic one. Nothing is ever static. Just as you have consumers' expectations, users' expectations changing all the time, so also do you have what do you call it, the business environment, the environment in which we operate is also changing all the time. The policies introduced by government, the standards expected across the industry for the quality of facilities provided, the standards expected for the quality of services rendered, all these things keep changing. One area that will make it clear to you that demands are changing, requirements are always transiting, is in the aspect of information technology infusion. Like I said to my class this morning, we have moved from 3G technology to 4G, and now everything is being put in place with 5G technology in the information technology and computer industry, and that has been said to be several times far better than 3G technology. It's faster, it's more efficient, and you can achieve so much more in your fields of operation. The implication is that so many things are going to change in the business world, the configuration of structures and what is possible to be carried out within them, and the kind of what do I call it now, technological preparation for them to receive that technology and to transmit it have to also be amended or adapted financial constraints are changing. So many factors are changing all the time. So the dynamism of the business world, the dynamism even beyond the business world, the services area, all the things happening across it, they pose challenges for FM, and particularly in the area of performance evaluation. So we need to be aware of changes, we need to be aware of techniques, we need to be aware of how we can adapt what we do and how we do them to meet up with all these changes. So I want us to critically evaluate or critically look at the problem that bedevil the process of facilities performance evaluation in the current situation, and let's look at what is being done generally to overcome these constraints. And then I will leave it to you to puzzle out on your own what more could be done, how much better could things be, whether in this country or elsewhere, and how can we ensure that we can adopt state-of-the-art approaches to the way we do things in our country. So let's take those constraints and try to understand them well. So what I was saying initially is that originally when facilities performance evaluation started, emphasis was on financial constraints. I'm going over this for the sake of those who joined just a few minutes ago. Emphasis was on was on financial performance, and also on other forms of items that emphasis was on. People who owned facilities wanted to know how much they were able to achieve their businesses and how their facilities contributed to that. So they were looking at costs vis-a-vis profit, and they were trying to emphasize cost reduction as if that was the only thing that was necessary. Even in looking at this, they had to make use of past records because at the time it was difficult to come in possession of the kind of broad-based access to information needed to do more thorough analysis. So what we are saying is that, in that past situation, FM performance evaluation was handicapped by the, should I say, limitation of the scope of areas that were put into consideration. But since then, things have changed, and now, apart from financial variables, they look at the quality of the facilities, they look at consumer satisfaction or user satisfaction, and they look at some other parameters that might be peculiar to that particular class of users, to that particular class of the facility. Now, what we have is a much more comprehensive approach, some of which can be reflected through our discussion of the balance scorecard. Remember, there are 4 physical areas under the balance scorecard that assessment of facilities management being done under. What are those 4 physical areas? You look at the consumer's perspective, you look at financial perspective, you look at what we call it now, research and innovation. We look at operations, processes within the organization, so as to get a more comprehensive, a more rounded picture. Also because you look at financial variables only, you will only be referring to things that had happened in the past. How much we buy this, that's it. We call them lagging variables. You'll be looking at past records of costs, past records of posting that were gained and all that. Right now, past performance evaluation needs to be more dynamic and needs to reflect more of what is going on, even in other companies, and that is why we talked about benchmarking last time. So now, what are the constraints we are facing, even in the new way of handling things. The first constraint is that of data. Facilities performance evaluation requires a lot of data, both from within the organization and from outside. Remember when we talked about benchmarking the other time, we said you need copious amounts of data so that you can have a very accurate, if possible, picture of what is actually going on. And from that picture, you can take valuable decisions that will move you better forward. Okay, so data and access to information, access to data is a critical aspect that continues to pose a large area of for facility managers. How do we gain access to data? We can build our own database by keeping records of what is going on in our own firms, and also by accessing information from friendly firms. Maybe you are in a benchmarking group, you can exchange data within that group in order to help one another assess performance. Okay, but then this is often not enough for you to be able to forecast what might happen, for you to be able to transmit that information into valuable decision making. You need to go beyond, maybe the scope of what you can get immediately to be able to conjecture or to be able to accurately forecast, into the future, and that way you'll be able to have a better picture. And in that area, some computer, techniques have come in that can help you project what data you have into, concrete scenarios that help you to test and evaluate what will happen if this variable changes, what will happen if that variable changes, in order that you have a very good picture that can help you now take appropriate decisions. So the most critical problem is that data is always in short supply. What you are able to provide from within only gives you a picture of what is within your firm. What you get from your benchmarking class, your benchmarking group, is limited only to that benchmarking group. Meanwhile, what you would need for proper innovativeness might be beyond your benchmarking group, might be beyond what you are able to immediately access. And then the other aspect of the problem, right, which is tied to what I just said, is that access to data can be very expensive. In advanced countries, there are firms that specialize in carrying out research all the time. The research they carry out sometimes is published and made available to the public. Sometimes it's on subscription. If you are not a subscriber, you don't access those materials, and it's expensive. They charge heavily for access to those materials, and it's very necessary that you be able to get them and make use of them. So if you are subscribing, you have to prepare a substantial amount of money available to be able to access that regularly. So data is a challenge. The cost of getting the data, the scope of the data, and also the currency of the data can be a challenge. And how to overcome that problem becomes something that you really need to puzzle out from your own angle. And apart from data, what other challenges do we have with facilities performance evaluation? The major constraint is that most of the time, the leadership or the facilities management, or should I say the owners of the farm, the people that take the strategic decision, usually they do not value enough the essence of evaluating the performance of the facility. Some see it as a waste of time, some see it as undue expense, some think they can just post along because there's a demand for their products and for their services. and so they are not prepared to take the time or release the funds or provide the facilities needed to sustain continuous performance evaluation. Some firms would only do it when it is statutorily expected, when there is a legal demand that you have a report, that you provide a document in order to be able to access maybe patronage from government and things like that. Okay, so but this is not enough. It's not enough for performance evaluation in the field of facilities management to be able to have the full impact it is supposed to have. There is a very big need for funding to be provided in order to be able to get all the necessary information, in order to have the infrastructure in place for the evaluation process, in order to hire firms that have expertise in carrying out certain kinds of evaluation, or if your type of facility is highly technically evolved, you'll be able to even provide the equipment you need to be able to assess your facilities every time. So we have mentioned two factors now. One is lack of data. The second one is lack of proper recognition of the importance of performance evaluation within the firm, and the fault lies at the doorstep of those who are, the ultimate decision takers within the organization, the management of the organization, or the strategic leadership of the organization. Most of the time, the facility management department is just a department under, the umbrella of the management, and there are hierarchies of the responsibility, hierarchies of the should I call it authority, and if the SM department is subordinate within the organization, it becomes difficult for you to just take a decision and follow up with it. You know in yourself that carrying out the evaluation of the performance of the facilities would be a very big advantage to the firm on the long run. But they will release the funds. They who will take the decision to release the resources do not have that understanding. So the onus comes on the facility manager to find ways to persuade the management to buy into the idea of regular facilities performance evaluation. And then in very good firms, large firms that really understand the essence of this and the advantage that would lie in carrying out evaluations. They have an R&D department that constantly gathers data, that constantly analyzes it. An R&D department that is empowered, that is well supported, but such is very rare, especially in our environment where it's as if many firms have not yet reached that level where they can say they have sustained survival. So data is a problem. Then getting access to facilities or to resources to carry it out appropriately is also a problem within our country here. Another constraint is the area of expertise, proper understanding of the techniques and their applications. And that's the essence of looking at some of the techniques we have covered so far. Of course, the techniques we've covered cannot be said to be comprehensive. There's so many good techniques. I'm sure in your classes with Dr. Kodosho, you have looked at several other techniques, logometrics, this one, that one, and how to even determine KPIs, how to determine various things that you need to know in order to assess your facilities and also in order to assess facilities management. Those things are to enable you at least have enough understanding to be able to design an evaluation within your organization and to effectively perform the evaluation within your organization. Okay, there are many facilities management firms out there where the officers in charge probably do not have knowledge of this technique. So what happens? The lack of expertise within the organization means you now have to hire experts when it becomes necessary to do the evaluation, and doing so can be expensive. Doing so can, put further pressures on your internal operations in order that these things might be done. But they are very necessary if the organization is to get the best, and if the facilities you manage are to be adequately well rated along the line. So we have said 3 or 4 things now. Number one is data is difficult to get and it's expensive to amass. And sometimes the data you get may not be correct, and even if it is correct, it may not be enough, not be adequate. So data is a challenge. Secondly, the buy-in of the management of the plan may be lacking. Now, thirdly, we have talked about lack of expertise, lack of knowledge, inadequate understanding of the technique and what it takes to have them carried out within our environment here. And there are other constraints that make it difficult for us to carry out facilities performance evaluation. Yes, in some instances, the kind of equipment you need may be lacking. Okay, when you are trying to check out, especially in the area of sustainability, there are some technical measures that you need to effect in order that you might be able to say whether your facility is conforming to standards or not. Measuring air quality might be something that requires you to invest in some equipment that you have to install and things like that. So those are some of the things that make judging your performance harder than should be the case. So all these constraints sometimes pose a disturbance to the effective use of the techniques we are using. Another set of constraints arises from the attitude of your department, the attitude of those that are supposed to make use of the results of the performance evaluation. Some do not want to be exposed. They don't want the inadequacies in their firm to be known. Now, so the results of the facility performance evaluation will sometimes be kept very close secret. For no just cause, as far as I am concerned, but because they feel that it might put that department in a bad light. It might put the organization in a bad light. It might expose their inadequacies and their inefficiencies. So, that's one of the reasons why in some firms, other departments oppose the work of the facility management evaluation team. They don't want you to know. They don't want you to see. They don't want their failures to be exposed. And so they pose a very strong opposition to any effort. That's a problem which makes the work of the facility manager unduly difficult. When you have bad attitude within the firm, the wrong attitude among those who are supposed to release data within the firm, among those who are supposed to cooperate in order to provide insight into what is actually going on, then you will have problems along that area. You have difficulty getting the right kind of cooperation you need in order to carry out proper evaluation of the facilities. Those are some of the things that make facility performance evaluation much more difficult than this. Okay. Now, another aspect of getting FM performance evaluation thoroughly done has to do with the part of regulations and legislation. Now, under normal circumstances, managing a building facility, it is only proper that you make sure that your building conforms to government standards, government regulations as relevant to that particular class of facility. Take for instance, in Nigeria we have a national building code. The national building code spells out the standards that every built facility is supposed to achieve in terms of spaces per user, the economics of space, also the servicing of space, the level of the utilities to be provided, the kind of safety measures that should be put within the facility, and fire safety precautions and all those things. The building code is a very important instrument that could help you to check how well your facility stands vis-a-vis those regulations. Now, in most instances, make inquiries, you might find that the firm does not even know, what those requirements are, or that when they were procuring their facility, some things were compromised one way or the other. So sometimes building regulations, government policies, government regulations, may be requiring very high standards, and we should be able to achieve them. And we should not see it as an enemy to look at those requirements and to upgrade facilities that are under our care to achieve the standards required. So you find that in some instances, those standards, which should now become like a guideline or a benchmark against which we can evaluate how our facility is performing, is looked at in a negative way, or is deliberately flouted in order to save costs, one thing or the other. And when you come into the management, maybe you were not there at the time of procurement, and you are trying to say, we have to do this, we have to adapt, we have to make sure that we do this in order that our facility might conform to standards. You may not always find the degree of the cooperation and acceptance that you need in order to follow through and get what you are suggesting accepted and done. So these are some of the elements of constraints that are, facing facilities performance evaluation. Now, remember this thing faced, all of us across the entire globe faced the pandemic. It is still very much around, although things are a little more relaxed in Nigeria than other places, and that has made it necessary for new standards to be introduced, new standards of facility provision, new standards of should I say health, especially health requirements in our facility. We have come to a situation where some things we taken for granted before, we can no longer take them for granted. A very easy example that is there for us all to see is that now everybody has to wear a face mask. The facility has to provide signage, the things that people put on their masks. Masks is very simple, providing hand sanitizing fluids at the entrance to your facility, hand washing facilities at the entrance to your facility in a manner that does not deface the ambience of the entrance and things like that. All these things require adaptations of facilities in order to ensure that what we manage is in line with government requirements, and it's also guaranteeing the safety of the users of our facility. Even if there was no regulation, we fail to provide those things. Those who use your facility might feel unsafe, might be exposed, might start moving out of the facility, especially if unfortunately one or two people are found down with the COVID-19 infection, and they are afraid that it might spread and things like that. So what do we do? It is a new challenge which we all have to face and face properly, and means that you should be benchmarking your facilities and your services, cleaning services especially, the standard of cleaning, the chemicals used, the frequency of cleaning. You need to benchmark against a higher level of requirements than was the case before now. And that means that one of the problems of facilities performance evaluation now is the need to upgrade, the level of evaluation, the details to be covered, the standard to be followed, and what do I call it now? Yes, indeed, the details to be included in order that you might be able to ensure that you meet up with current requirements and even be a step ahead. You might decide the organization to adopt to be a step ahead by looking at things you could do that you could include in order that your facility will be perceived by users as offering a safer environment in the light of the present circumstances. So the current situation is not limited to Nigeria. It's a global matter. New products are coming up. Some of those new products might be unduly highly priced, and if you are not on top of the information, if you are not on top of what is current, if you are not really as informed as you should be, you might not be able to take good advantage of all these things. So what do we do in order to overcome these challenges? Build your own data bank, buy access to a data bank, subscribe to a regularly updated data bank. That's one thing that is possible. Secondly, persuade your organization management, your organization's ownership to provide resources in order that you might be able to carry out performance evaluation regularly or as the need arises, to enable you be on top of what is needed and be ahead of the competition. That is also something else you can do. Then apart from that, manage your facilities in such a way that the results of your benchmarking efforts are made evident to the users, to the consumers of your services. It's also very critical. All those things help us to ensure that we are several steps ahead of the problems that could make our work as facilities managers more challenging than this. There could be other things depending on the peculiar needs of your facility. For instance, if you are managing a smart building, you are managing an intelligent building, there are things to do with improvements in sensors, there are things to do with innovations in that area that might demand that you are very much on top of expertise in those areas. You might need regular training to be able to understand more the new innovations and how to take advantage of them. You might need to start to puzzle out more how to minimize costs and all that. So I want you to just be aware of these problems and be aware of how they are being overcome by those who are in the industry. Regularly, workshops are being organized, trainings are being organized, webinars are holding. Without being told, you should go online. Some of the materials I posted, as I said at the beginning of today's discussion, are from YouTube. A recorded seminar or workshop rather, dealing with an aspect of what I wanted you to look at. And I think, on your own, you should avail yourself the opportunity. No matter how busy you are, you are still taking this course because you realize there's value in empowering yourself. Take a step further and browse. These things are there for free. You don't even need to pay. So you can use use it to update yourself, use it to empower yourself, use it to open your vista, or use it to open your understanding of the advancements in other places that can help you also to upgrade what you are doing. So, because it's been a long day, I am personally tired. I was even contemplating canceling for this time. I'm not going to say beyond that. I know you must be tired. Having had a day, a tiring day. So I would like to stop there, but also to hint you that whatever we have done so far, please take your time to look at them thoroughly. There are materials I will still send through the class notes, on which I will still expect you to read very well, in order that you might have more insight into the issue. Principally, when I started this evening, I asked whether the record of what I have that we have finished with tallies with what you recorded also. And I didn't want a situation in which I am assuming that we have covered this when, as far as you are concerned, such areas have not been covered. So I would like you to please take your time to look at what we've done so far. If you have questions on them, feel free to send me, questions via WhatsApp or through the class governor. You will transmit them to me, and I will address them at our next meeting. I know that your exams are very close, but like I used to say, you are not here to write exams. You are here to gain a skill. You are here to gain a knowledge. Although we use the exam to test whether we have gotten through to you or not. We use the exam to test whether you are absorbing the information or not. The principal reason for being here is to get the knowledge and to be able to apply that knowledge. So I want you to please avail yourself the opportunity of looking at those materials and reading them. And then if you have questions, read them. If you have questions on SAP4, you have questions on EFUM, you have questions on benchmarking, you have questions on post-occupancy evaluation, you have questions on any of the things we've done so far, please feel free to raise them. I asked whether we had covered usability, because I wasn't very sure if that aspect had been covered. But I want to just ask us to please make ourselves available for one more class. It may be a short class like this one, depending on the kind of questions I get from you. Your questions will guide me as regards what we need to do. And if there are other things that I feel is beneficial to you at this time, I will post it, like I said earlier. So do we have any questions? Any questions? If you have a question, please unmute yourself and ask your question. If you have questions, please unmute and ask. Alright then, in the absence of any questions, we'll call it a day. And I will be discussing with the class governor as regards what to do next. Okay, thank you very much for coming on board this evening's discussion despite the day's activities. I know it's sorry, I'm looking for something I wanted. Okay, so all that I promise to do, I will do them. And if you have questions, please feel free to raise them as the week goes on. Thank you very much. Good night then.
Okay, thank you very much, ma'am. It was an interesting lecture. So if there is any question, I'll send it to you.
Okay. Yeah. Good
You're
night
welcome.
then.
Good night, ma'am.